Welcome to another best wildcard team video ahead of game week 7, and we do have some midweek games in the Champions League, so be sure to tune in for the UCL Fantasy deadline stream. But it is going to be a bit of a complicated time to wildcard, and game weeks 8 to maybe 12 does pose a nice opportunity to maybe play the wildcard then. But for those of you that are set on playing it now or have already activated it, then this team will help you a lot. And not only that, even those of you who are maybe looking to make some free transfers, this may give you some ideas on some players to bring in. But without further ado, let's get straight into this one. Let's get this video to over 200 likes, and be sure to let me know your ideas down in the comment section below. But I have gone for a different goalkeeper this time, although he has been an honourable mention in some of the previous editions. Nick Pope is for me the best 5 million goalkeeper. He's now 5.1. He has also got a very high ceiling. He can get some double-digit returns with the bonus points, the saves. He made a record 9 saves so far this season in game week 6. He has done a really good job for Newcastle. And if we look at the underlying numbers, which we'll get into in the transfer tips video, they're actually not that impressive, but they have faced Liverpool and Man City in the opening 6 game weeks of the season so far. Ward is just there to sit on your bench, so don't worry about him. He's always going to be there unless Pope faces City or Liverpool, and then in that odd occasion you can play the Leicester goalkeeper. But the way Leicester are playing, I probably can't even see myself doing that. Some alternatives for you to consider, especially if you're not keen on perhaps doubling on Newcastle's defence, include Robert Sanchez, Dean Henderson, and you could still arguably go for Edison, but I would try to limit it to 3 goalkeepers. Take your pick: Nick Pope, Robert Sanchez, or Dean Henderson. Ramsdale isn't making enough saves, and Arsenal are conceding the odd goal here and there. Only 2 clean sheets for them so far this season. Alisson and Liverpool have endured a poor start to the campaign despite the clean sheet in the recent game, and also Edison is just not justifying that extensive price tag. So I would try to keep things simple and go for these goalkeepers that are cheaper but have a higher ceiling. And Nick Pope and Newcastle have some fantastic fixtures, arguably the best over the next 5 to 7 game weeks. I have gone for the 3 usual defenders in James, Trent and Cancelo, but you could make a valid argument to go about any single one of them, and that includes Trent, who has some pretty tough games coming up, and Cancelo, you could say the same thing about him too. Now, Reece James has fantastic fixtures, and Chelsea are about to enter kind of a golden period, especially after their clash with Liverpool, but you could also go for Fofana. You can cover them in goal with Mendy, although I wouldn't do that at all, and Ben Chilwell made such a big impact off the bench. In 18 minutes, he got a goal and an assist and changed the game versus West Ham, but I still prefer Reece James, and I think he warrants the extra millions over both Chilwell, Fofana, and any other Chelsea defender you can name. But with Trent and Cancelo, I don't think you necessarily need them as much, and if I had to pick one defender right now, it would be Reece James in terms of the premiums, so to speak. Now, Kieran Trippier is 5.1 million. He got 8 points overall in game week 6. I got him in for my team along with Mitrovic for a -4 hit, which involved getting rid of Robertson, and it did pay off. And Trippier is a bonus points machine. He can get those assists and goals, although I think his attacking threat, as I always say, is slightly overrated despite his amazing free kicks. And I think this is a solid backline, and Nico Williams is the kind of budget defender, so a bit of a transition from the kind of bigger the back formula. And once again, you don't necessarily need Trent and Cancelo on top of the Reece James you already have. So this is a good defence. You could go for Fofana if you have enough millions and you back Chelsea during those fixtures that are coming up to keep clean sheets, and that's where he could justify the extra 0.3 million over Nico Williams. Some alternatives do include Chilwell, but I would wait and see if he's nailed first of all, because he's still competing with Cucurella for a spot as the left wing back in Chelsea's team, but he probably deserves it after what he did in the London derby. There's also Dalot at 4.5 million, who's got some attacking threat. Malacia as well, but I don't think his attacking threat is anywhere near Dalot's right now. Saliba is still a good option, especially for the next few game weeks, but Arsenal have a really bad fixture swing from game week 9 onwards. You've got Perisic. Once the fixtures clear up and the Champions League isn't too much of a problem as it is this week, Lewis Dunk from Brighton. There's a few others as well like Veltman, but Dunk would be my preference in the Brighton defence. And ultimately, you've got a lot to choose from, but this is definitely pretty solid. I have made wholesale changes to the midfield, and that includes the omission of Mohamed Salah, who could be a great captaincy option this week, but the fixtures afterwards look really poor, and it's really hard to justify spending 13 million, especially on a wild card, on a player who you're not going to captain in most weeks, if not all, especially with the form of Erling Haaland. But nonetheless, I still think Salah could be a great option moving forwards. I'm just really concerned, not only by this season, but also what he's been doing throughout the whole calendar year in this new creative role where he's not getting into those central positions as he was in the first half of the last campaign and absolutely tearing it up and competing for the Ballon d'Or. Raheem Sterling is the kind of like-for-like replacement. I'm still a bit unsure about him, and let's see how he plays with the arrival of Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. We should see a bit more during midweek in the Champions League, and that's something to definitely monitor. Andres Pereira is there as the 4.5 million midfielder. He's now 4.6, and I don't see any real need to go for anyone else. I'm not convinced by the other 4.5 million options. Josh Da Silva isn't even playing games, and I think Andres Pereira is the better option overall. Rashford is in here after his brace and assist against Arsenal in a 3-1 victory for United, and that's an all-time record for him, 18 points, and he is absolutely lethal on the counter-attack. He's in good form, he's finishing his chances, but I think maybe in terms of the games against the lower teams, the ones that aren't going to be playing with a high line, they're going to be a bit more resolute defensively, sitting deep. Will Rashford be able to impact those games as much? I don't think so, but I still can see some returns for him over the next few games. And even when United's fixtures are a bit murky in a few game weeks' time, I think Rashford could actually do even better in those matches than he would when the fixtures are all green in the FDR. Wilfried Zaha, for me, is the best option at his price and below. He did blank against Newcastle, but from Crystal Palace, there's no other option I would consider, and around the same price, I think there's no contest. Gundogan's another one I really like, but he's not nailed. Zaha is, he's on set pieces, and he's also in the form of his life. He scored the third most goals of any player in the Premier League, and if Son continues his poor form, I could see Zaha actually surpassing him. So only Kane, and maybe soon to be Haaland, are the only ones who can maybe have more goals in the Premier League in this calendar year. Then Martinelli is an interesting one, because I think he's got some two really good fixtures from an offensive point of view against Everton and Brentford, but after that the fixtures are definitely problematic, and you could go for Trossard, maybe Gross, and a few others around a similar price. So Martinelli might not be the best pick in the long term, to be quite frank. And some other midfielders to also consider is James Madison. I think he's the best midfielder around 8 million. He's now 7.9. Leicester are awful, but Madison is by far their best asset, and he showed some consistency at the beginning of this campaign, as well as the tail end of the last season. Then you've also got Salah, who I mentioned before. Heung-min Son has been pretty awful so far this season, but he showed some promising signs against Fulham. He just didn't take the chances, but I think the goals will come eventually. And it could even start, funny enough, against Manchester City in Game Week 7. Kevin De Bruyne is one of the best premium midfielders, probably up there with Mohamed Salah, and Brighton midfielders, like I mentioned before, Trossard, Gross, take your pick there. McAllister even on penalties, and he was man of the match against Leicester in a 5-2 victory for the Seagulls. You've also got Lucas Paqueta around 6 million with some great fixtures for West Ham, but I would rather go for Bowen, who was incredible last season. He is showing some signs slowly in the last few game weeks that he could get those returns once again. And even though he's not my favourite around that price, with those fixtures, I think that could translate into some form. Then you've got some more budget-friendly options like Aronson and Harrison. Leeds are looking a bit awful at the moment, but they still will score goals offensively. Sinisterra is another one. So keep an eye out on all of those midfielders. But I think this would be good enough. But if you are unsure about Sterling, which to be fair, I still am, you could always go for Salah and maybe change things up a little bit in other areas. I mentioned a lot of alternative options in each position, but I think in the forward line, it's a bit more straightforward. You've kind of got 3 to 5 forwards to choose from in the entire game that I think will be definitely viable, with fixtures and form included, and that includes Tony, Mitrovic, and Erling Haaland. What we could also do is actually downgrade Sterling to a cheaper midfielder, maybe one of those that I mentioned earlier, and you can upgrade Ivan Toney or Mitrovic up to Harry Kane, because they're looking like the two best premiums in the game, Haaland and Harry Kane right now, and it looks like the season of the forwards, at least so far. Early days, but you know, you've got Mitrovic even from a newly promoted club fighting for the Golden Boot. You ultimately expect Haaland to win it, but Mitrovic, what he's doing is absolutely incredible. Even Ivan Toney with the hat-trick against Leeds, I don't think he'll score as many goals as Mitrovic, but he's also got some very good fixtures still. And Ivan Toney with a great free kick, he's on penalties, he's never missed a penalty for Brentford, 18 out of 18, so he's very, very lethal from the spot, and I really like this structure. Gabriel Jesus is a good option for the next 2 game weeks against Everton and Brentford, but after that, I think it's a good time to move off these Arsenal assets, and by wildcarding now, you can make these moves a little bit earlier than the rest, and Ivan Toney has some good fixtures. Mitrovic has Chelsea, but after that, the fixtures look great, and to be honest, I still would target that Chelsea game, and that West London derby could actually prove fruitful for Fulham and their assets, including Andres Pereira and Mitrovic. And Erling Haaland, nothing needs to be said about him. He could easily be the permanent captain until the end of the season. The only concern would be rotation, as always. The other forwards that I would consider are Isaac, although I prefer Mitrovic and Tony around the same price, and then you've got Gabriel Jesus. But right now, I think these are the three best forwards in the game alongside Harry Kane, and it just depends if you want to go for two premium forwards or balance things out a little bit more, as we have done with this squad. So let me know your thoughts, what you would change, and I'm going to maybe tinker now a little bit here on the FPL website to show you a different draft of what you could do with this money, but this looks pretty good overall. So this squad is definitely a lot more risky, and it costs 100.9 million for me anyway, with all the prices included. The first team cost 100.3 million, so both of them are very affordable for most people, and it'd be very rare for any of you watching to not be able to build these teams yourselves. But Jarrod Bowen is probably one of the ones I look at and think maybe that's a bit too risky, but the fixtures are great after the Newcastle game. Madison is one of my favourites around that price anyway, and there is no Liverpool coverage here whatsoever. No Trent, no Salah, none of that at all. And you have Kane and Haaland up front, which right now looks like the two best premiums in the game, seeing how this season has started. Let me know which of these drafts you prefer. And are you looking to wildcard this week or maybe in game week 8 or 9? I think game week 8 and 9 do seem very popular in terms of the time to wildcard, but it ultimately depends on your setup, your plans in the future, and when you want to get ahead of the curve in terms of getting rid of Arsenal players, target those fixture swings, maybe go for these Newcastle double and triple ups, West Ham, and all these different teams that have some really good fixtures. A few other teams like Aston Villa also have some great games coming up, but you also have to be very careful because they haven't been that good so far this season, despite their draw against Man City in Game Week 6. But thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video or found it useful, be sure to smash the like button and subscribe if you're new. Let's get this video to over 200 likes. And by the way, we hit 13,000 subscribers on the Saturday in the deadline stream. Thank you very much. And already in like the space of 2 or 3 days, we are almost half the way through to 14,000. So the growth over the last week or two has been absolutely sensational. Let's try to get to 14,000 subscribers very, very soon. And thank you to all the new patrons and channel members. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and also check the links in the description below, including the FPL League, the Discord server, the Patreon and channel membership links. All of that good stuff is there. So thank you very much. I wish you all the very best of luck, and I appreciate your support as always. And I'll see you next time.